Hi, Steve and Joanne. I hope you're excited for our second installment of videos. I'm excited again to walk you through a modified version of what we talked about last time in the previous video. If you remember, which of course you do, in the previous video we talked about an 8-year time horizon, meaning that the assumption was that Steve would be working for another 8 years. And that was kind of the key ingredient in all this, that beginning in that 8th year would be when Steve would need, or when the two of you would need to start to draw retirement income because of the loss of that income. And if you remember, we've got our Social Security built in. Steve, we've got you drawing Social Security at your full retirement age of 67. We've got a pension starting, and then of course we've got real estate income, which really starts beginning at age 69, and that's when your policy loan balance is repaid. So instead of the cash flow from the real estate flowing to you as income, it's flowing back into the policy towards your policy loan balance. And then of course your 401k, we made some assumptions there, and the idea is that it flows into or rolls into a SPIA or private pension, and that private pension pays out the 18,175, and then of course we can utilize the policy for some income as well. So you kind of get a bit of a refresher as to where we were before. Well, if we shave 3 years off of our funding timeline, our window of opportunity within which to be in position to start to generate retirement income, that changes things a little bit, as you might guess. So let me walk you through a bit of a different scenario. I think it'll still work, but it changes things just a little bit. Okay, first things first. Let me come back over here to our, so this is a separate spreadsheet. This is showing now a 5-year plan instead of an 8. Really nothing changes on the real estate side. In other words, we're going to fund the policy just the same. We're going to deploy the cash value in the policy just the same. We're still going to try and be as aggressive as we can in deploying our cash value for real estate investment purposes over about in this case, I think we stopped a little bit shorter. Before, I think I showed us investing or acquiring properties over a longer window of time. Here, we're going to cut it off about 3.5 years in. And so maybe from a practical standpoint, what does this mean? Well, this will be something that you evaluate. I would assume that as you get a little bit closer, as you get a little bit further down the line into year 2, 3, you may start to have a better idea of what your timeline looks like. In other words, is it likely to be 5, or is it likely to be something longer than that? I would assume you'll probably start to have some indications as to what that window of opportunity looks like, and when things might shut down as far as employment. So the assumption here is that we fund for 3.5 years, and then again we use our monthly cash flows to flow back into the policy towards the outstanding loan balance, at least initially, but we're going to deviate from that here in just a second. So those all look the same. One difference though is our assumptions relative to that 401k. Here you'll see that we only fund the 401k over the 5-year window of time. So we start at the same balance, we assume the same contributions, we assume the same return, but our balance is different, of course, because this is 5 years as opposed to 8. So this 189,707 would roll into a SPIA just like before in the 8-year scenario, but it's going to happen sooner, which means that our income from it will be less. We've got a smaller balance, and Steve, in your case, you're 3 years younger than you were in the previous scenario. So that's gonna reduce our monthly benefit a bit. Okay, So now we know the difference there, 5-year versus 8. Let me pull up our income spreadsheet. So you'll notice that there are a few new columns here. Okay, so we've got Joanne's Social Security, just the same. We've got Steve's here that doesn't start till age 67. So we've got a bit of a gap there. I made the assumption that the pension would start really whenever your employment would end, Steve. I assume that that's how that would work. So if you're employed 8 years from now, then at that point the pension starts. But if it's only a 5-year time frame, then my assumption is that the pension starts at that point. So I assumed that pension there. Now, the SPIA column I mentioned before, we had a smaller 401k balance, and we're starting to draw income 3 years sooner. That means that our SPIA balance is less, but it's still guaranteed for the rest of your life. Okay. Okay. What about this real estate column here? This is new, or it's different. It's the same real estate column, but it's a bit different. Okay. So you'll notice first off, 12.9. Well, what we would do at year 5, if we come down here, which is, let's say that's when retirement kicks in. You'll notice that our monthly net income is $1,677. And for our purposes, I assumed like a $1,650 a month, okay? Which that gives us about $20,000 a year of income. So, and that's net of the interest on our policy loan. Previous to this, right, this cash flow has always been flowing back into the policy and being applied to the outstanding policy loan balance. But do you have to do that? No. What I would suggest is if you were to find yourself or yourselves in a 5-year scenario, we need the income, especially in the beginning, before Steve's Social Security kicks in. We really need the income. So instead of having this, let's just call it, $1,650 or whatever it is, instead of having that flow back into the policy, you can start to take it as income. The interest is already being paid, so you're treating it almost like an interest-only loan. The interest is covered, but instead of going back and paying back the outstanding loan balance, you're starting to pull that as income. So I used about 20,400 was the number that I can't. So I rounded it up. That's what I did. I rounded it up to $1,700 a month, and I said that gives you $20,400 of annual income, assuming that you're now taking that income or that cash flow as income rather than having it pay back your policy loan balance. Well, why is it only $12,900? Well, if we come back over here to our insurance policy, we really do want to try and hit the 8-year window. It's important in order for us to be able to really be in an effective position to offset our policy after such a short window of time. Even just to make the base premium portion of our payment goes a long way. And so what I did was I said, well, let's account for that. Let's have that be paid out of our real estate income. So instead of the $20,400, I subtracted the $7,500, and that's our $12,900 over that 4-year window of time. Okay, so Joanne's Social Security, pension, the real estate net of interest and funding the policy, the SPIA. Now over here, the home equity, I looked at your financial questionnaire, and it looks like you've currently got about $150,000 or so of equity in your home. I just said, well, let's assume 5 years from now, between paying down the mortgage even more, and let's assume some maybe even a little bit of appreciation on your home values, but not much. Let's say that you're at more like $175,000 of equity. And then I assumed you could either take a reverse mortgage, or if you don't like that idea, which many people don't, maybe you do a cash out refi. something like that, where let's say you're able to have access to that 175, and then I just distributed it at the same rate that your SPIA was paying out, just to kind of give us a good middle of the road feel for what your home equity could do in terms of income generation. So that gives us another 11.5. So when we add up all of those various sources of income, that puts us at about 80,000 or so a year, 6,600 bucks a month for those first 3 years. Okay? Then what's different in the fourth year? Well, what's different in the fourth year is now we're going to start, because we've funded our policy, now we can start to draw down a little bit. So I showed us taking the 25,000 of income from the policy. That starts to supplement things a little bit in that year if we needed to. In other words, if the 6,600, if expenses are starting to kind of tick up a little bit, we've got a source of income that we can start to draw from, and that can help supplement. And then once we get beyond that, that's when things really start to kind of take off, because Steve's Social Security income kicks in, which is a big boost. We're not funding the policy anymore, which means that we can start to draw the full value of our real estate income, which bumps us back up to that 20,400, and then still showing us drawing another 25 from the policy. Now we're up closer to $11,000, $12,000 per month. And then once you get beyond that, really you've got a few different options when it comes to this real estate column. This assumption right here is you're only ever, or you're taking the income from your policy. You never really go back to paying down that loan balance. You're only ever just paying the interest and continuing to float the outstanding policy loan balance. But as you can see, because of the ability for your cash flow to adjust for inflation, that's not a bad scenario to be in, because your rents will adjust up while your policy loan balance probably won't, right? It's not like that balance adjusts for inflation like the income that you're generating from your real estate. So that's why we see these numbers increase. The other scenario that you can do, and this made the sort of the internal mechanics of the spreadsheet a little cumbersome, and so I didn't build it in yet, but I'll probably build in another version of this. But the other thing that you can do is when you get to this point here, and now Steve's Social Security income is kicking in, you could stop taking your real estate income for a few years. I think it would probably be about a 5-year window. So let's say you stop taking the income here for about 5 years, and instead you have that income flow back to that policy loan. Let's say you say to yourselves, you know what, we really just want to get that policy loan balance just wiped out. You can do that. You can reroute. The income served its purpose in the short term because we really needed that income to get us through. But once we're through and we've got this source of income in, maybe now we reroute this real estate income back to the policy to pay back that loan balance. We can. And if we did that over about a 5-year window of time, we'd have our policy loan balance completely repaid. And at that point, if we chose to start to take real estate income, let's say beginning in year 6, then we'd probably have income, $35,000, $36,000 of income. So that gives us a little bit of a bump in real estate income, and we have cash value that's completely unencumbered, and we have no outstanding policy loan balance. So you have options within this real estate column. This certainly isn't the end-all, be-all, only option that you have to choose from. Okay, looking at time, looks like we're almost out of our first 15-minute video. I'm almost done, but I'll jump into video number 2 and wrap up there.